back to what I said: is if you know how to import it, you can be 70 and still get around the fact that you're old and falling apart. Um,
So why do some women have a very difficult time peaking and others can come within 30 seconds to a minute and like 12 times within 10 minutes kind of thing, and then others are just very I find that the personality types that are more almost, I don't want to say stuck up, have a harder time peaking and
that's
take
usually
more
because you got a big
work
Saturn
to.
there. Yeah, yeah. The stuck up ones have a lot of Saturn in them.
Okay,
That's all I can.
so it takes more priming of the pumps to get the fuel going.
One little thing I did, in to the point of making sure that the person I married is like that, is I know from my astrology the women who are more primed and the men who are more primed. And I always tried in my own life to try and get a woman who has a Venus that has a very strong astrological aspect, that is a 0, 60, 90, 120, or 180-degree angle to the planet Pluto. Pluto. Plus, Pluto is the god of sex and death. And the women like that are only about 2% of the population. And whether they were for my wife or for my lovers, I shop for them very
Yeah,
carefully.
yeah, yeah. That's why they always say there's plenty of fish in. I mean, the dating app. You've probably heard of it. It's bigger than all other combined. So when you're talking
I've
about
heard of it, yeah.
astrological chart, yes, you're essentially saying that it's Saturn that is closest to their place of birth when they're born. Is that how the reading works on the chart?
Uh, the astrological chart is your birth chart. Your birth chart is the position of all the planets and the sun and the moon in the sky on the day, and if you want to get really accurate, on the minute you were born.
Yes, but I'm specifically talking about Saturn. So for
Uh,
someone, you said 2%. So of the population, does that mean that planet was closest? Like, let's say
uh,
if you're born in Canada, the planet would be on the other side of the world, but closer to your place of birth. Is that how it works? Because you're taking in that
no,
energy, which
no,
affects
no.
your DNA and your personality,
Uh,
right?
no, but you've hit on a point anyway. No, because if let's say Venus and Pluto are 90 degrees apart at this moment, or Saturn and Neptune are conjunct at this moment, they'll be conjunct both here and in Toronto, Canada, or sorry, you're in Kitchener at the same time. The difference is,
Mhm.
if you look at the astrological chart, that that conjunction, let's say between Venus and Pluto, if it's on my eastern horizon, because you're on 180 degrees of the part of the world, it'll be on your western horizon. And that'll affect your destiny too, though not in that straightforward way. So, for example, if right now the moon is at the top of the sky here in Singapore, in Kitchener, Ontario, you will not be able to see the moon. It'll be off the horizon.
Well, I'm not
It'll
in
still,
Kitchener.
yeah,
That's where I lived. But the moon last night where I am, I'm in a small town in the country.
yeah,
It was beautiful last night. Full moon, nice and bright. I mean, there's obviously some energetic changes that happen because people can get affected by the moon. That's when the
yeah.
wolves howl at it as well. I had a teacher who could feel when a storm was coming through her bones, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. What you're looking for, as you said, is the ones who respond more. They usually have some kind of entanglement. Their Venus or Moon or both will have some kind of angular entanglement with either Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, but especially Pluto. If you want the one who turns to a tiger in bed, go for Venus Pluto angle on the chart on a woman.
Can you tell that just based off their what sign they
Birth
are,
chart?
or do you need
No.
to go? Yeah, like
I have to know the
if
day they're born
so
and the
I dated
year.
a Leo. I didn't get along when I dated a Leo at all. She was like mirroring me, but I'm a Virgo. it was interesting because there's just I mean, it's like we talked in our last interview. You can't be dominant in the relationship and dominant in bed. That equates to a miserable relationship. But there was obviously two people were butting heads because they were both trying to maintain that power. And usually when you want to have power, it's because you're lacking in other areas of your life. Would you say that's true if you're trying to control things? It's because you can't in
Definitely. Definitely. I became a very power type person when I was older, and it's directly related to the fact that when I was young, I was put in a position of great powerlessness up to age 15. You overcompensate later
Hmm,
at some point in some way. Yes.
yeah. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, you don't want to feel powerless, so you take it wherever you can. You're filling in vices in a void at the end of the day. It's you don't
Yeah.
really need to dive too deep into psychology, and I love psychology because I love understanding the human mind and the human condition sociology, because if you can't understand that, you won't understand relationships and you'll never have good relationships, right?
Absolutely. Um, and if you want me to go back on this, about the whole quantum thing, so what happens is it's in sex, what you're doing there, if you're trying to manipulate and make fortune for the better for yourself, is you're trying to basically change the quantum field around you and change the kind of probability waves that materialize in your life and in the people around you. So I don't know if you're trying to get your best girlfriend and wife, or you're trying to get $1 billion. You have to basically when you visualize that in sex with someone, especially with some either on your own or with someone who cooperates with you in that, you can go a lot further. And sometimes part of the cooperation is when you're doing this, it helps a lot if you look up to the woman or the woman looks up to you because it
Well,
ties
there
in.
should be a form of mutual respect, right?
Yeah, well, because to a certain extent, one part of it involves role playing, whether you're role playing, Shiva and Shakti, or Vishnu and Tara, or Kuan Yin in the Chinese goddess spectrum, and so on. But that's another
Mm.
angle to it. Like I said, it's a pretty complex topic. Uh, but I can tell you that it's that basically sex-based occult did save me from a life of material destitution and probably an early death. I was in a position where I
Saved you
backed
from mortal death, you said?
from probably shivering to death in the streets of Toronto at minus 15 Celsius, or deciding I've had enough and ending my life. Yes, it saved me from that.
What how'd you figure that out?
It began in the 1990s when you see, the spell casting came later. When I first got into astrology and realized how predictive it is, I was in my early 20s, and the agenda was girls, girls, girls. Um,
Of course.
so I used it to that end, and I also got cursed for using it to that end, because what happened was, around 94, I knew I was supposed to go through 2 years of bad luck and probably come close to losing everything. But I knew in mid 96 I was supposed to turn around. And up to then, my predictiveness of things, both in myself and other people, was pretty good. Suddenly, after I lost everything, including, I mean, I really leveraged this thing. I had by my early 20s a condo overlooking Lake Ontario in Toronto. Okay. I lost
Mm.
that and everything else by my late 20s. And I wasn't very important. I was telling you that I expected 2 years of bad luck and to turn around in 96, right? It didn't turn around.
Hmm.
And even when I was supposed to get good luck, it completely failed. So I was scared, really scared. I was about 2 months away from being homeless. I couldn't pay the rent soon anymore. And I went to this woman who's much better astrology than me. And I said, "What the hell's happening, Mary Ellen? It worked till now. What's going on?" So she looked at my chart back and forth, said, come back in half an hour. So I came back to her with a Starbucks latte, and I said, and she looked up at me and goes, you've been womanizing a lot. I said, yes. You've been using the astrology to know when to call a woman and get her in bed. Yes. And she said to me, do you know what happens when you use astrology for selfish reasons, purely selfish reasons,
Karma.
without thinking the other person? She said, all your good luck goes to your victim, and all their bad luck comes to you. Eric, stop fucking around.
Really?
And within a few months of that, my luck went right side up again.
So, how do you find a good partner? So, okay,
Yeah. Now, how the thing works, in my opinion, is this. You notice that the planets are named after different gods, like there's a Venus, the god of love, and the Mars, the god of war, and so on. I think this is what
before
happens.
you continue real,
Yeah,
quick, why do they say that men are from Mars and women are from Venus?
because they want to sell a lot of books and pay for a swimming pool in their backyards.
Good
Uh,
answer.
Actually, okay, I'll give you the concrete astrological answer, okay? Um, every
Sure.
astrological chart has 10 planets. So Venus, Mars,
10.
yeah,
10.
about
Why
10.
10? I thought there was 9. Okay,
Well, you
where
have
did planet Nibiru? Some say it's very
no, I'm
close
not
and
talking about that.
interconnected.
There are okay,
Doesn't that affect your personality type? Is that not
no,
intertwined at all?
no, it's in none of
Your
my
quantum?
charts.
No?
No.
Huh.
I stick to the 10 standard ones. The reason there's 10 or 11 is they count the sun and moon as planets. Sorry, the sun as a
Okay.
planet, though it obviously isn't. Um, so what happens is on a man's chart, your sexuality is controlled by the sun and Mars. And the woman you want or attract is controlled by the moon and Venus. But in a woman's chart,
Hmm.
the sun and Mars is not the type of man she is because she's not a man. The sun and Mars are the type of man she wants. And the moon and Venus is not the kind of woman she attracts unless she's a lesbian. It's the type of woman she is sexually. So men are influenced by both Mars and the sun, not just Mars, and the woman by both
Yeah,
Venus. But you see, those planets mean
that
different
makes
things.
sense.
The planets mean different things depending whether you're a man or a woman, because the polarity is reversed, you could say, of attraction or repulsion, you know?
Polarization, yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense. And personality type
yeah.
definitely directly impacts what your personal preferences are, whether you're dominant or whether you're laid back. I've also heard that if you're dominant in bed, you can't be dominant in the relationship because it equates to a miserable relationship.
Yes, it does. It does. The thing that people have to understand is the idea that, one is totally dominant, one is totally passive is a fiction because everyone has to have a balance in them, you know. Some will be more extroverted than others, of
Hmm.
course, and some more introverted, but
Yin and yang.
just
Yep.
because I mean, just because I'm a man doesn't mean I don't cook food, you know. Just because my wife's a woman doesn't mean she doesn't like sports, kind of thing, you know.
Love languages, right?
Yeah, yeah. Paganistic in outlook, so no one god has complete control. For example, your mind is under the control, is ruled by Mercury. Things like drugs and
Yes.
religion are ruled by Neptune, and so on. So
Hmm.
it just happens to be that Saturn has control of the physical laws of the universe, and it's a restrictive power. So, for example, if I see your sex planets on a chart with Jupiter, you're going to have more sex than most people, most likely. If I see your sex planets wired up with Saturn, you might have a wet blanket or disappointing sex life because Saturn limits, Jupiter expands. I mean,